it's Linton again, playing the part of the last Old Testament prophet for you. As usual, the prophet goes in and says, go to nomovies.net, scroll on down, you can read and look at pictures, maybe get something out of them. And if you need to get in touch with me, contact me at, and then it takes you on down to how it shows how the web page starts. Today it's going to be on Prophesy 9 dam collapse. We've talked about different collapses. Today it's dams. A couple years ago, last spring, there was a crisis, February I guess, involving a dam near town of Oroville in California. I followed a bit. And as I looked at the independent media, there were two schools of thought. One side saying everything's safe, it's completely under control. Other side saying run for your lives. There was some good natured name calling, and it worked out okay. There was in fact an evacuation. I don't think anybody got hurt even in the evacuation. All right, we know that three kinds of rock, igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. All right, sediment, like seafloor or swampland or whatever, piles up over a long time. Lava, igneous, appears rather quickly, and either one can be subject to metamorphosis by time, pressure, heat. Once you get down to bedrock, it's pretty solid most of the time. Not always true here in Florida. You'd hit lime rocks full of caves and underground rivers, and it might be a little shaky, but most of the time, most bedrock is really solid. Take a look at a major earthquake fault, and from what I've seen, they look like done with a cookie cutter. Oh, the crust broke, but broke in a straight line, no zigzags, and very little in the way of, crumple, just crack, breaking a sheet of glass. Not even that, like cutting a piece of a pane of glass. All right, and I don't know whether the pictures I was looking at were selected for their eye appeal or not, or they're trying to make a point, but it looks like most earthquake faults are just straight. All right, you look at the Oroville Dam, you can see the area of the rock is, wait a moment here while I find my cursor. There we go. Okay, sorry. I fidget and then lose the cursor. You look at the ravine walls in the Oroville Dam, and it's fragmented. It's busted up into pieces. The whole side of the canyon wall, the rock is not pulverized, it's not powdered, but it is shattered. All right. Some energy, must have been an earthquake, that would make an ordinary headline worthy earthquake seem puny, has been in there breaking that rock up. My guess is, I'm not an expert, there way back when there was earthquake activity that was unbelievably powerful. All right, how plausible is that? Here is Sacramento. There is Oroville, California, straight north of Sacramento. You got this little bulge here on the coast of California, and it's about the bottom of the bulge. That's where Oroville is, just eyeballing the map. Here's a map of earthquake sources. All right, there's Sacramento. there's that little bulge. Okay, north of Sacramento, about the bottom of the bulge. There is roughly where Oroville is. All right, it's miles from the nearest area where there's a lot of earthquakes, but not that far away. And we're talking something a long time ago. All right, and they still have earthquakes felt in the region. Maybe it's not the occurrence of the 1975 magnitude 5.7 earthquake within 70 kilometers of Oroville, not without precedent. Okay, yeah. So there might have been an unprecedented earthquake that shattered that rock. Okay, skip way forward in time. The Feather River cuts through this vulnerable landscape. I mean, geologically vulnerable. All that broken rock, well, it was pretty easy to erode for a river, wasn't it? Weather in California very seasonal. During dry part of the year, I understand, before the dam, the Feather River would run dry. And then other times of the year would be enormous rains. So, torrential rains, raging freshets, water is tearing down there, crumbled rock. Yeah, it was nice, nice deep ravine, and there was some gold in the rocks and the walls of the ravine. Some, right? Now, gold doesn't react easily with other minerals, other chemicals, and so when it forms in the earth, it tends to be formed essentially as pure gold, lying in natural faults and cracks in the rock that it has separated out from, and it can be very beautiful and flower-like. Now, once the rock breaks apart, the hunk of this lacy gold tumbles down to the river, gets banged along on the ground, it gets beaten into a smooth nugget, and that's what we see more of. This is a nugget that hasn't been pounded up that much. I think it's been pounded up some, all right? But it's very close to the lacy appearance. Couldn't find you a good picture. I've seen them in the past of the fresh nugget right coming out of the rock. So the geology of it was such that you've got these gold nuggets tumbling along the river. They settled out in sandbars, and it was commercially valuable to exploit them. Right? You could go get nuggets with a pan. You shovel some sand into a little pan, slosh water in, wash the sand out, and maybe leave behind some nuggets of gold. All right. So let's see. Sutter's Mill is where the first gold rush began, first news, and that's about 90 or 100 miles from Oroville, so it's not the same place. Oroville had to be pretty good because the name means gold town. There must have been a lot of gold recovered there. All right, then skip forward another century from the gold rush, and it was obvious that there were these heavy seasonal rains in the north, and they needed a lot of water elsewhere, so put up a dam, run some generators, get some clean, free energy, and pipe the water to where it's needed. All made it on paper. It looked great because it's really, really deep ravine. Remember how easily eroded that rock is. Trouble is the trouble was that the walls of this ravine were not ideal. Boulder Dam, uh, Lake Mead is behind it. Pretty close to dry now with this prolonged drought, but yeah, Boulder Dam to my eye looks like a solid concrete thing wedged into solid bedrock. You know, the kind you expect. Um, I don't even remember how long it took them to pour the concrete for the Boulder Dam, but it took a long time. Single pour. They never stopped pouring until they were done. Um, so it was decided to make the Oroville Dam. You couldn't do that because you'd have these edges and water might work its way around the edges. That can be handled, but it takes some effort. You'd never know when a new leak would show up. So they decided to make it out of mud. Not unheard of. You can make a dam out of mud. Personally, I think sandbags uh, are a good way to go. But anyway, you just pour mud. Um, and so they did. Then about a year and a half ago, or it was actually 2.5 years ago, prolonged drought was broken by a lot of rain. The reservoir behind the dam filled. That's good. And power, they're getting a lot of power. They're spilling the water through the generators. One of the generators doesn't work, has not been replaced since that time. I imagine it's because during much of the year, the final generator would be sitting idle. It wouldn't make enough electricity during the times of the heaviest rains to make it worth replacing. I don't know, just a guess. Well, there's a main spillway. Was the water piled up behind the dam? The main spillway plus the generator room, what they call the machine room, and a little diversion channel, all working together, couldn't get ahead of the rising water. It was rising faster than they could get rid of it. So they decided to use the emergency secondary spillway, which was never supposed to be used. It was a slightly low place along the top of the dam, away from the major spillway, and a little concrete apron on it. And they said, "Oh, we'll use the emergency secondary spillway. Others will do nothing. We'll just let it run over the top of the dam," and they did. Went down that apron, broke it up. Uh, Forest on the wall of the dam there was washed away. There's piles of dead trees and silt, and it was just munching at the dam's fabric itself. The concrete was lost, I guess. So I had to go back to using the main spillway because the emergency secondary spillway was cutting into the dam, and they were in a position where they might have breached the whole dam. So they evacuated people. They went back to use the major spillway, and they had gates that would let water through. Leaky gates designed that way, and they dumped water onto the major spillway, and it pretty much destroyed the major spillway. Huge hunks of that were ripped up and washed to the bottom by the waters. There's a movie Zerba the Greek, and at one point Zerba has this idea he wants to move some logs from a mountainside down to a place where he can use them. And he has a cable strung up so the logs can be rolled on the cable, little wheels hanging on the cable to let them um, move. But he makes absolutely no arrangement for dissipating the energy that those falling logs were going to develop. His model worked fine, but the energy produced by the actual thing was enormous. So that didn't work out real well. Nobody was hurt, although changes had to be made. Well, if you look at the rebuild, okay, so for 2 years after the crisis, they were still finishing up the last final touches. A $1 billion rebuild. It's California; they throw money around anyway. $1 billion rebuild of the major spillway, and just like Zorba's log thing, that spillway goes straight from the gates to the bottom. Dead drop. No swishy, no baffles, no steps. It just drops. And at the bottom, it gets to the end of the concrete spillway. You can see that it's crashing down onto fragmented Oroville, less than ideal rock. That's not a good plan. They decided to test it. They'd run it 100%, make sure it was okay. Well, apparently, and again, look, I'm having to juggle sources that don't like each other a lot. They ran it at 20%. The spillway began to throb. They shut it down. All right. So they had the same problems Zerba had. Didn't have means to control the release of energy. The secondary spillway looks better to me. Looks like what they did was build enormous kind of stair steps. Not just one set of stair steps, but several of them at different angles and different heights. So as the water was coming over the top of the emergency secondary never-to-be-used spillway, it would go down one flight and another flight, and the flights would meet, and basically you'd have turbulent rather than laminar flow, and that would dissipate a lot of energy. So I'm thinking we should be out of the woods thanks to the redesign of the secondary spillway, and the primary spillway I still don't like. But that's okay. It's not as vital as it was. But you would like to have a backup? Okay. But remember, apparently, not in the field, but apparently this whole thing started ages ago with some incredibly powerful earthquakes. And they haven't occurred there for quite a while. It's not even thought to be a earthquake zone. The nearest earthquake zone is 70 miles or something, 70 kilometers, 50 miles or so. If that earthquake comes, evacuating all the people down that valley, very, very difficult. I'd say if I ran the zoo, and it may be good luck that I don't, but I don't. But if I did, I'd say this is not a good place to store water. Do not impound water behind this piece of geological trash. Find a different way to go about the business of sending the water someplace else. I don't know what the other ravines are that are above the Oroville Dam. They probably are through much better rock. After all, they don't have that enormous ravine, and they aren't named Oroville. They didn't have turn up all that gold. So yeah, you could go up there and run a pipe from each of those downstream and pipe it off to whatever part of the world you wanted to send the water to. Yeah, sorry, but you're not going to generate a lot of energy. You might get some, put some generators in the pipes, but don't back enormous quantities of water up behind that place. It's not really geologically suitable. Well, somebody in California politics, they say, and somebody said maybe the governor, I don't know. But somebody allegedly has said that he favors rewilding California. Turn it back into the glorious wilderness it once was, which means get rid of all the people and leaving behind a paradise for presumably the super rich and their servants. If that happens, well, quite likely the dam would come down. Um, but so I don't think it's going to happen. So yeah, I wish they would remove the dam. Can't do anything about it. Cannot make any prediction how many years it's been that it took for that earthquake to happen, and how long ago did that happen? You'd have to know that, and I really, really don't. I'll imagine somebody does. Okay, best of luck. I think we'll be able to have another show sometime, and the dam will not have burst. Now then, I've mentioned all that huge glacier that could form over California, and that's still a possibility. Yeah, that leaves a big unknown. I'm staying here in Florida right now. See ya.